Good afternoon, YouTubers. It's Ben here from Southeast Queensland Storms, back with you for another Southeast Queensland thunderstorm forecast, and your forecast starts now. Good afternoon, Southeast Queenslanders and YouTubers. Welcome to this beautiful Sunday, the 8th of September 2024, and a very good afternoon to you wherever you are tuning into this thunderstorm forecast update for Southeast Queensland. And I hope you're having a fantastic weekend. It's a really beautiful Sunday afternoon across Southeast Queensland this afternoon, and September is here, which means a couple of things. Firstly, for footy fans, the footy finals season is upon us in terms of the AFL and the NRL, but for us storm chasers, September means spring, and spring means thunderstorms, and then into summer and storm season likely to kick off very, very shortly. We do have thunderstorms in the forecast for Southeast Queensland as we push into tomorrow and Tuesday, and I'll have all those details for you very, very shortly. But spring is here, and storm season hopefully gets underway pretty shortly. This is a submission that was sent to us way back on Thursday, the 27th of October 2022, from Caloundra on the Sunshine Coast, with a beautiful storm time-lapse taken down there on the beach. And I'm hoping as a storm chaser we get to see plenty of sights like this as we push in over the next couple of months. So really, really beautiful time-lapse here, and just makes you want to get out and chase some storms. So let's see what we can see as storm season gets underway. Just a reminder, if you like the content you're seeing on our YouTube channel, then please subscribe to us here on YouTube, and if you take a look at the bottom of your video screen, you'll also see our contact details on the other major social media platforms, being Facebook, Instagram and X. So if you're on those major social media platforms, make sure you give us a like or subscribe. That way you have all the latest weather information for Southeast Queensland at your fingertips. Alright, as we said, we do have, looking ahead to the forecast for tomorrow and into Tuesday, we do see the potential for some isolated thunderstorm activity across parts of Southeast Queensland, in particular the southern areas of Southeast Queensland, down along the Queensland-New South Wales border, into the Gold Coast hinterland, up to the Scenic Rim and into parts of south of Brisbane as well. Now, the thunderstorm potential, it's due to an approaching upper level trough, and it's working in a bit of combination, because at the moment we have some cooler air sitting in the upper levels of the atmosphere as well, and then also another factor to take into account is we also have a southeasterly change making its way up the coast as we push into tomorrow and Tuesday. So when you put all those factors together, the upper level trough, the cooler air in the atmosphere, the southeasterly change, we are seeing the potential for some isolated thunderstorm activity across southeast Queensland. Now, as we get a little bit further north up into Brisbane and the north side of Brisbane, we seem to be having some capping or inversion issues up there, which may inhibit or prevent thunderstorm development in areas of Brisbane further to the north. Again, we're focusing on areas through the eastern southern side of the Darling Downs towards the Granite Belt, the Queensland-New South Wales border, the Scenic Rim and areas on the south of Brisbane. Now, at this stage, a widespread severe thunderstorm outbreak is not expected and is very marginal, and that's likely and due to the lower and weaker instability values in the atmosphere. However, don't be fooled. Don't be complacent. Some thunderstorms tomorrow or into Tuesday could deliver some gusty winds, as well as some small hail and bursts of heavy rainfall as well, and that's all due to those pools of cooler air in the atmosphere as well. So let's jump into the forecast and take a look. Firstly, we'll start with some temperatures around southeast Queensland this afternoon. We'll start with our members in the southeast coast district, and taking a look at Brisbane, it's 23 degrees there, 26 at Ipswich, 26 also at Gatton. Further down to the south, 25 degrees at Bow Desert. We've got 21 degrees at Helens Vale, and it's 21 degrees on Tweed Heads at the Queensland-New South Wales border. On Brisbane's Bayside, 21 degrees at Victoria Point. It's also 22 degrees at Deception Bay on Brisbane's north side, 22 also at Bongaree towards Bribie Island, 21 degrees on Moreton Island, 21 degrees near Donnybrook, 22 at Maroochydore up on the Sunshine Coast, so a really good looking afternoon up there, 21 at Marcoola and also 22 degrees at Tewantin. Pushing further north into the Wide Bay Burnett District, we got 25 at Kingaroy, 26 at Gympie, 22 at Tincam Bay and Maryborough and Harvey Bay respectively, and 26 degrees at Gayndah, and also 22 degrees at Bundy. Coming back down further to the southwest to our friends out there on the Darling Downs Granite Belt, 27 degrees at Miles, 28 at Chinchilla, 26 at Dalby, 25 at Oakey, 25 degrees at Toowoomba. It's also 25 at Warwick, 22 at Stanthorpe on the Granite Belt, 29 degrees at Inglewood, and lastly 27 degrees at Goondiwindi. All right, let's take a look at the official Queensland forecast from the professionals at the Bureau of Meteorology. This is their Queensland forecast that they issued at 4:30 this afternoon, and a couple of key points to take out of the forecast. Firstly, in terms of the weather situation, the Bureau is talking about a trough, which will move east across southern Queensland, reaching southeast parts of the state as we get into tomorrow, and the trough lingering around or loitering around as we move into Tuesday before the trough begins to push back towards the west and weaken as we go through into Wednesday. Now, what's the result of that trough coming across southeast Queensland? Well, if you take a look at Monday, the 9th of September, tomorrow, the Bureau talking about isolated severe thunderstorms possible about the southern border ranges and scenic rim regions in southeast Queensland during the afternoon and early evening. So the Bureau there in their forecast talking about the potential for isolated severe thunderstorms, which are possible across those southern border ranges areas and the scenic rim in southeast Queensland. It's a similar story as we get into Tuesday, the 10th of September. Again, you can see the Bureau talking about here the chance of a thunderstorm in southeast Queensland, south of Gayndah, mostly inland. But they don't really talk about there the potential for severe thunderstorms as we get into Tuesday. But for tomorrow, the Bureau talking about the potential for some thunderstorms to reach severe thunderstorm limits, in particular along those southern border ranges of the Queensland-New South Wales border and into the scenic rim. And then by Wednesday, that seems to be the end of it. So tomorrow and Tuesday seems to be the focus as we get into the storm forecast. All right, if we take a look at our district by district forecast, firstly for our members on the Darling Downs Granite Belt for tomorrow, you can see the Bureau is talking about the chance of thunderstorm activity in the southwestern parts during the morning and afternoon. And then for Tuesday, the 10th of September, the chance of a thunderstorm in the far eastern parts of the Darling Downs as well. So definitely for those of you on the Darling Downs Granite Belt tomorrow, definitely pay attention to the radar because there could be some storm activity pop up in your neck of the woods. For Southeast Coast, forecast districts are closer to the coast into the Brisbane metropolitan area, the north and south side of Brisbane, all the way down to the Gold Coast through the scenic rim, Brisbane's west. We see again the chance of a thunderstorm in the southern parts in the afternoon and evening, possibly severe in nature. So again, potential for severe thunderstorm activity as we get into tomorrow afternoon, the later parts of the afternoon into the early evening. Again, in particular along those Queensland-New South Wales border ranges up to the Gold Coast hinterland, up to the scenic rim. So definitely we'll pay attention to the radar tomorrow afternoon. And then on Tuesday, the 10th of September, again, we see the chance of a thunderstorm. But again, the Bureau not talking about severe thunderstorm potential limits on Tuesday, the 10th of September. Lastly, for our members in the Wide Bay Burnett District, similar story. You can see that the chance of storms tomorrow up in the Wide Bay Burnett District, so that's north of the Sunshine Coast and upwards. There's no talk of thunderstorms for the Wide Bay Burnett as we get into tomorrow. And on Tuesday the 10th, we see the chance of a storm in the southern parts of the Wide Bay Burnett as we move through the later morning hours into lunchtime on Tuesday the 10th. So for those of you in the Wide Bay Burnett District, doesn't look to be much doing tomorrow. It's more into Tuesday that you might see your chance for a storm, but it's only in those southern parts of the district. All right, let's jump in and take a look at some forecast model information. And just a reminder to all our members that the following forecast information I give you from this point of the video onwards is reflective of an amateur storm chaser only and not that of a professional or qualified meteorologist. For all official forecast information for Queensland, I urge you to visit the BOM at www.bom.gov.au/Queensland. All right, let's take a look firstly, and as we jump into tomorrow, this is tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and the reason we're just taking a look at the winds here, we can see that southeasterly change. Here it is, beginning to push up along the northeast New South Wales coast as we get into tomorrow, and you can see that southeasterly flow pushing in towards here, being met at a bit of a convergence points there from winds from the northwest as well, so we can see the southeasterly flow feeding in and basically converging in towards the northwestern flow as well. So that southeasterly change that's pushing up the northeast New South Wales coast will aid, obviously, in the development of thunderstorms tomorrow. And again, we're watching that area through the scenic rim, the Gold Coast, New South Wales border ranges, and then out and towards the east and southern parts of the Darling Downs Granite Belt as well. If we firstly take a look at our lifted indices chart, now you may be asking what's a lifted indices chart, but basically this is a chart that we look for an instability index. Basically, it gives us an indication of how unstable the atmosphere is at a particular point in time, and this is taking a look as we get into 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, and basically the higher the negative values that we see. So if you see values of -10, -11, -12, that is a very strong indicator that the atmosphere is extremely unstable and very positive for thunderstorm development. So if we take a look at our values on screen, we see the highest values down in these darker blue areas around Rathdowney, Killarney, down towards the Queensland-New South Wales border as well, where we see values basically up around the -2 to -3. And if we do see values around -2 to -3, -4, that indicates weak to moderate instability in the atmosphere. So weak to moderate instability indicates that the atmosphere is unstable, very favourable for thunderstorm development. So that's as we get into 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Now the next chart that we take a look at is our surface cape. Now this is convective available potential energy. So the reason that we take a look at a cape chart, because it gives us an indication of the amount of energy that's available for storms to develop through the depth of the atmosphere up to the limit of convection. So basically, same thing as the instability chart, the higher the values, the more favourable the conditions are for storms. So on this chart here, again, we're seeing values up around in the grey, so we're seeing values around the 6, the 7, up to the 800 mark. Again, along that Queensland-New South Wales border area, on the scenic rim near Rathdowney, over towards Warwick as well. We're seeing some values, again, possibly up around the 600, around Brisbane's west, up near Amberley, extending up to Esk. But with the instability and the convective available potential energies for storm development, you can see why the Bureau's focusing in on that scenic rim, Queensland, New South Wales, southern border ranges up towards around the Gold Coast as well. Now, if we see values here up to 1,000, usually indicates weak instability, but if we also see values between 1,000 to 2.5, it indicates moderate instability as well. But definitely, potential energy levels available for storms, weak to moderate instability in the atmosphere. You can see why some storms are in the forecast for tomorrow. Now, this is the next chart that we look at. This is called the K-index chart. Now, the reason that we take a look at the K-index chart is because it's a chart that's used to identify how favourable the atmosphere is for mass thunderstorm development. And if we see numbers are basically exceeding 35 on this chart, then that's indicative of numerous thunderstorms. And again, we can see the darker and the purple. So again, the purple are values up around the 38 to the 40. So again, a real little hub of thunderstorm potential in around that eastern side of the Darling Downs near Warwick, over towards Rathdowney, Gold Coast hinterland, scenic rim. That's where we're seeing the highest values there, of anywhere from 34 in the dark maroon areas into the black and then into the purple. So this little area here that we would be focusing on, again, you can see the further north we go up to Brisbane, Caboolture, white appears, which is basically, we're not interested in that. We're interested in the black, the purples, and the dark maroon colours. And here we're seeing values of anywhere from 34 up to 36, 38, possibly up to around 30. And when we see values between 31 to 35 and above, that's indicative of scattered to numerous thunderstorm activity. So again, watching that scenic rim, Queensland, New South Wales border southern areas, and over to the eastern side of the eastern and southeastern sides of the Darling Downs, through Warwick down to Stanthorpe and to the Queensland, New South Wales border there. Now, this is the Access C Southeast Queensland High Resolution model, and it's a forecast radar, which is basically the Bureau of Meteorology's model predicting what the weather radar may look like at a particular point in time. And this is starting at 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. And we can see these little areas here of red. And basically what we see there on the radar is values of 50 dBz and above, up to 60, is indicative of thunderstorm activity. So again, we can see these little areas of red here, so some storms popping up around northeastern New South Wales, possibly by 5 o'clock tomorrow afternoon in northeastern New South Wales. We also see some thunderstorm activity around Warwick, Killarney, over again in northeastern New South Wales, as well as some cells popping up through Rathdowney down towards the Queensland, New South Wales border as well. And as we roll that through to 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, again, the Bureau, remember the Bureau talking about the potential for thunderstorm activity in the early evening, and again we could see some clusters of thunderstorms around Warwick, Rathdowney, over towards the border, towards Killarney, up towards Bow Desert on the scenic rim, as well as we get into 8 o'clock tomorrow night, 9 o'clock, and then into 10 o'clock, pretty much over with. But again, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, we could see some thunderstorms still firing up as we get into the early evening hours as well. Now we take here, this is thunderstorm potential, so taking a look at where areas may experience storms tomorrow. Again, this is remaining with the Access G Bureau of Meteorology model, and basically the areas coloured in yellow indicate a low risk of thunderstorm activity, whereas the orange areas represent a low to enhanced risk of thunderstorm activity. And again, you can see it's all on the southern parts towards the Queensland-New South Wales border, the scenic rim, the Gold Coast hinterland for storm potential tomorrow. And again, that is supported by the instability values we're seeing in the atmosphere, the convective potential, available energy levels for storms development tomorrow. So again, that will be our focus as we go through tomorrow. As I said, for Brisbane and further to the north, we have some capping inversion issues. There's also the potential for some cloud development, so cloud cover in the early hours or in the morning hours as well. Now, obviously, cloud cover is something that we don't want to see on a storm day as well, because cloud cover does inhibit storm development, because it obviously interferes with daytime temperatures as well. So cloud cover has a dramatic effect on temperature forecast, as clouds can cause the surface temperatures to be more or less than what's in the forecast modelling. And then clouds can also reduce the daytime heating process that are required for storms as well, because that's given the thickness of the cloud as well. So if the cloud's really, really thick, it blocks out the daytime heating, it blocks out the sun, and then the sun can't heat the ground for storms to get going with the instability. So areas from Brisbane to the north doesn't look really, really good for storms tomorrow. We're focusing on the scenic rim, eastern to the southeastern parts of the Darling Downs Granite Belt and along the Queensland, New South Wales border ranges. And lastly, if we jump over to the Brisbane Storm Chasers forecast page, we can see the potential for supercell storms. So this is a supercell probability forecast for those of you in the weather community. Obviously, supercell thunderstorms are the worst that we can get. Supercells are the ones that really do the damage and bring the destruction with them. But as we can see, as we get into 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, there's only a 5 to 10% chance of seeing a supercell tomorrow based on the atmospheric conditions. So 5 to 10% chance for a supercell. So with that said, that's going to wrap up our thunderstorm forecast update for this afternoon for southeast Queensland. So for those of you in the southern parts of southeast Queensland tomorrow, pay attention to the radar, as we do have the potential for some severe thunderstorm activity in your parts of southeast Queensland. And then I'll take another look at what the storm setup is as we get into Tuesday. But with that said, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a great rest of your weekend, and I will see you on the next weather video update. Take care. Have a great evening.